Let's have a talk, let's have a chat, talking about a little this and that. Hello and welcome to another episode of This and That. I am your host, Mary Easterling, and we are continuing on with TEOTWAWKI Revisited. This will be part 3. But before I begin, to listen to episodes 2 and 1 of TEOTWAWKI Revisited or anything else from This and That, go to talkingaboutthисandthat.wordpress.com and click on the podcast link. In our last episode, we talked about rules-based international order explained, what it is and why it matters. But it hinges off of the UN Charter, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UN Security Council resolutions, UN General Assembly resolutions, amongst tick, 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 tick. The first item up is the UN Charter. I said I was going to look at this. Now, this is the United Nations Charter from UN.org. And this is the About Us, the Charter, the full text. This has 111 articles. And then there are notes on amendments to articles. This is going to be a long read, so let's just get into it. And I also want to point out something. You know how you know this is the Americans doing this? Listen to the language. We the people is in our Constitution for the United States. Guess what the preamble of this thing starts with? We the peoples of the United Nations determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind, and to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in equal rights of men and women and of nations large and small, and to establish conditions under which justice and respect for the obligations arising from treaties and other sources of international law can be maintained, and to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom. Not only is this very constitutional-esque, it's also leaning towards humanist thought. Thought I would put that out there because this is not Christian. It's men creating order to avoid chaos. War brings chaos. Law brings order and avoids war, which brings chaos and death and destroys the ecology, economy, and society where it is waged. This is me talking, going back to the preamble. And for these ends, to practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors. Full stop. Where have we heard that before? Monroe Doctrine, the good neighbor policy that got added in, and at the end of the Cold War got taken out. Why is that? Well, because somebody wanted to be the hegemon the whole time. Turns out there may be a massive hypocrisy sewn into the UN. Massive. And it isn't from them. It's from the people that said, we're God's people. We're the godly nation. Shining city on the hill. Look at us. The American terror? Okay, moving on. To practice tolerance, to live together in peace with one another as good neighbors, and to unite our strength to maintain international peace and security, and to ensure by the acceptance of principles and institution of methods that armed force shall not be used save in the common interest, and to employ international machinery for the promotion of the economic and social advancement of all peoples. What does that mean? Methodologies of rules, regulations, and enforcement of said, which I'm waiting for to be done against us if we're going over to Venezuela and doing what we did, because we broke the charter. I'm pretty sure we broke the charter. I'm going to find out if we broke the charter as I read this thing. Let's just see. Did we break the charter? Should we be under sanctions? Should we be under what I said in the last episode? My 90-day plan that would basically do unto the U.S. what seems to have been done to Medicaid. Gut us. You want to talk about severities. But let's just see. So these methodologies prevent armed force from having to be used until there's a problem that needs to be dealt with. And the international machinery is economic political cooperation across all these nations to promote. And of course, the biggest international machinery is peace. Ordered societies working together to swap ideas, like medical advancements that could be useful for all of the communities in the UN. I mean, POTUS did do one thing. I hope it stays that way, and I hope it's not removed. I hope the next POTUS doesn't put cannabis back up on that title thing and say you can't study it, it's evil, it's evil, it's evil, it's evil, it's evil, and we're going to censure all the states that even use it for medical purposes. It's evil, it's evil, it's evil. If we find it, we're going to kill it. It's a weed in the ground. It's been growing forever, and it has uses. Just live with it. See, it's not the cannabis. It's not the alcohol, the fermentation of plant life. It's not the concoctions that are coming into this country that are abusive to it, that are drugs like cocaine, et cetera, And by the way, cocaine and coca leaves are entirely separate entities. Coca leaves are a plant. If you drink it as a tea, it gives you energy. It also helps you breathe better at higher elevations. That's why they use it up there in places that are higher elevations. They chew the leaves. It helps them to have energy. It helps them to keep going because it's harder at higher elevations to move along and get along. But cocaine is processed. There's a lot of other additives stuck in it. It's actually a very potent brew of poison, and it's not good for you. Neither is the fentanyl that is coming across now. But fentanyl, medicinally, is a very powerful pain reliever. And there are some people with disease processes that need that kind of pain relief because it will just bring relief to the pain. They never get high. They just get relief. Amazing. See, it's the abuse of it and the misuse of it. That's the problem. That's always been the problem. Call it what it is. It's how you use it. Guns are not a problem. It's why they're being used. Guns might be necessary if another nation comes into this one. And if you don't have a gun in your household and the jackboots from another nation come in, you're dead. You couldn't defend yourself. But to have a gun and commit crimes and shoot somebody because you don't like or because you're angry or because you're having a bad hair day, it's how it's used. It's what it's used for that determines use or abuse. All right, continuing. So this is what they mean by institution of methods. Have resolved to combine our efforts to accomplish these aims according to our respective governments through representatives assembled in the city of San Francisco who have exhibited their full powers, found to be in good and due form, have agreed to the present charter of the United Nations and do hereby establish an international organization to be known as the United Nations. Chapter 1, Purpose and Principles, and here we go into the articles. Article 1, Purpose of the United Nations. The purposes of the United Nations are 1, to maintain international peace and security, and to that end to take effective collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats to the peace, and for the suppression of acts of aggression or other breaches of the peace, and to bring about by peaceful means. Remember the above, that armed force shall not be used. That's what they're talking about, peaceful means. And in conformity with the principles of justice and international law, adjustment or settlement of international disputes or situations which might lead to breach of peace or armed conflict. The or armed conflict, I add. It's not in the document. When you have a breach of peace, you have an armed conflict. And what do you get? Armed forces going in and being used. 2, to develop friendly relations among nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, and to take other appropriate measures to strengthen universal peace. Universal meaning on the planet, not the other planets in the universe. Thought I would add that in. 3, to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian character, and in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights and for fundamental freedoms for all without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion. And 4, to be a center for harmonizing the actions of the nations in the attainment of these common ends, which is Common ends 1 through 3, maintaining the peace, developing the friendly relations, and achieving the international cooperation, basically. Article 2. The organization and its members, in pursuit of the purposes stated in Article 1, shall act in accordance with the following principles. Now let's see. Did we break one? The organization is based on the principle of the sovereign equality of all its members. All members, in order to ensure to all of them the rights and benefits resulting from membership, shall fulfill in good faith the obligations assumed by them in accordance with the present charter. This is the charter, by the way. We're reading it. All members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means in such a manner that international peace and security and justice are not endangered. Full stop. The United States of America and Venezuela are members. The United States of America says, member Venezuela is a problem child to member USA. Drugs are being pumped in by member Venezuela. Did we go to the UN? Did we get any sort of UN investigation going as to whether or not this is true? Now, is Venezuela involved in the drugs? Sure. If nothing more, then it's a corridor from below Venezuela to above Venezuela. You have to go through Venezuela to get to north of Venezuela, especially if you're in other countries. Is Maduro a bad guy? He has federal warrants against him for, I don't know. Are these federal warrants UN issues? Yes. But was their peace and security and justice endangered when we went in, took their leader, and dropped ordnance on them? Yes, it was. We weren't supposed to use armed force. Bingo. Strike one! Okay. All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. Full stop again. United States and Venezuela. Isn't Venezuela considered a sovereign entity, its own country? See, everybody's screaming about Greenland because of the North American Treaty Organization, NATO. That's the only reason why they're screaming, because it will turn Europe against us. And Europe is trying to get POTUS to understand, if you do this, NATO is going to not dissolve, it's going to turn on you. They say it's going to be the end of NATO. No, actually it's not. It's going to cause NATO to act against us as the aggressor if we put boots on the ground. They're never going to sell to us, so go ahead, make all your pitches and sales. But even the Department of Defense, or if you want to call them now the Department of War, well, the warlords of America said, no, we're not going to obey this. I'm talking the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'm talking the brass with stars that just hang out into infinite space. The big boys, the big boys. They have to answer to a very angry and upset Hegseth. See, he wants the invasion. They said no. They said, because it's unconstitutional, it'll violate NATO. We're not doing this. We're not putting this country and its constitution in harm's way. By the way, DOD, thank you. Keep resisting. Put the fist in the face of something that is a bad idea for this nation. Keep doing it. So, next, all members shall give the United Nations every assistance in any action it takes in accordance with the present charter, and shall refrain from giving assistance to any state against which the United Nations is taking preventative or enforcement action. Oh, ding, ding, ding. Excuse me. We did something, UN. Why are you not taking enforcement action against us? So that my thing about 90 days actually is in the charter. Oh, what? Go to talkingaboutthis-and-that.wordpress.com and listen to the last broadcast. Oh, it's a doozy, and it's all there for you to hear. What if we put an economic gun to our own heads? That's the what if we. And the nations would have to go along with it because they're all UN members. But it's called distasteful because we were so good for so long. Times change. The organization shall ensure that states which are not members of the United Nations act in accordance with these principles so far as it may be necessary for the maintenance of international peace and security. Okay, is Russia and China a member of the UN? Let's see. Let's just see. Oh, wait a minute. Russia's a member of the UN, but I bet I know who isn't. I bet the Ukraine is not. Bingo. The Ukraine is a member of the UN. Russia is a member of the UN. You know why they're screaming about this? But the UN is not doing anything to Russia to stop it. Where are the UN troops in the Ukraine to stop Russia? So now let's ask this next question. China is a member of the United Nations. What? Oh, all right. Those that are not members are to act in accordance with the same principles as the members to keep international peace and security. But Russia and China and the U.S. are UN members. That now gives us a real look at the hegemony bid. The U.S. will hold this hemisphere, Russia will hold its hemisphere, China will hold its hemisphere. We will fold all the member nations into 3 zones of the UN, and then we can do whatever we want. No. The UN's premise, if I get this correctly, is that the sovereign entities of member states are to remain within their boundaries as sovereign entities. In other words, national. Boundaries, states, national. They only call them United Nations and member states when they actually should just be called member nations, because that's what they are. The United Nations member nations, not states, nations. But that's okay. Nothing contained in the present charter shall authorize the United Nations to intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state, or shall require the members to submit such matters to settlement under the present charter. But this principle shall not prejudice the application of enforcement measures under Chapter 6. That'll be interesting, because Chapter 6 might be about human rights. Shall we see? Shall we see? Nothing contained in the present charter shall authorize the United Nations to intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state, or shall require the members to submit such matters to settlement under the present charter. But this principle shall not prejudice the application of enforcement measures under Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is interesting. It's not human rights. It is action with respect to threat to peace, breaches of the peace, and acts of aggression. But we're not there yet. So this charter is in chapters. We just read Chapter 1. Chapter 2, membership. We're in the 3rd article. Original members of the United Nations shall be the state which, having participated in the United Nations Conference on International Organization in San Francisco, or having previously signed the declaration by United Nations 1st January 1942, sign the present charter and ratify it in accordance with Article 110. Article 110, which is under ratification and signature. And this is Chapter 19, Ratification and Signature. It's short, so we'll read it. The present charter shall be ratified by the signatory states in accordance with their respective constitutional processes. The ratifications shall be deposited by the government of the United States of America, which shall notify all the signatory states of each deposit, as well as Secretary General of the organization when he has been appointed. Who's the holder? We are. Who suddenly went off the rails? We did. This is a problem. The present charter shall come into force upon the deposit of ratifications by Republic of China, France, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the United States of America, and by a majority of the other signatory states. And when I say states, think nations. A protocol of the ramifications deposited shall thereupon be drawn up by the government of the United States of America, which shall communicate copies thereof to all signatory states. The states signatory to the present charter, which ratify it after it has come into force, will become original members of the United Nations on the date of the deposit and their respective ratifications. Fine. So this means you're a member once you are ratified a member in accordance with what I just read, which was Article 110. Article 4, membership in the United Nations is open to all other peace-loving states which accept the obligations contained in the present charter and in the judgment of the organization are able and willing to carry out these obligations. What if you love peace but you can't enforce it? You're out. The admission of any such state to the membership of the United Nations will be effected by a decision of the General Assembly upon the recommendation of the Security Council. Article 5, a member of the United Nations against which preventative or enforcement action has been taken by the Security Council may be suspended from the exercise of the rights and privileges of membership by General Assembly upon the recommendation of the Security Council. The exercise of these rights and privileges may be restored by the Security Council. Can we say sanctions? Article 6. A member of the United Nations which has persistently violated the principles contained in the present charter may be expelled from the organization by General Assembly upon the recommendation of the Security Council. That is a problem because a lot of nations have done this persistently and have not been booted. For the UN, Strike 1! Chapter 3, Organs. Article 7. There are established as principal organs of the United Nations the General Assembly, Security Council, Economic and Social Council, Trustees, Ship Council, Internal Court of Justice, and Secretariat. Such subsidiary organs as may be found necessary may be established in accordance with the present charter. In other words, if we have to add more, we will. Like something called the Board of Peace that Trump is now head of, and his son-in-law could be next in line to head. Something's very interesting here. Article 8, the United Nations shall place no restrictions on the eligibility of men and women to participate in any capacity and under conditions of equality in its principal and subsidiary organs. In other words, people can be part of and work for the UN from anywhere. Chapter 4, General Assembly. Composition. Article 9. General Assembly shall consist of all the members of the United Nations. Each member shall not have more than 5 representatives in General Assembly. Functions and powers. General Assembly may discuss any questions or any matters within the scope of the present charter or relating to the powers and functions of any organs provided in the present charter. And exception was provided in Article 12. Article 12. An exception provided in Article 12 may make recommendations to the members of the United Nations or the Security Council or to both on any such questions of matters. And Article 12 says, while the Security Council is exercising in respect to any dispute or situation the functions assigned to it in the present charter, the General Assembly shall not make any recommendation with regard to that dispute or situation unless the Security Council so requests. Secretary General, with the consent of Security Council, shall notify the General Assembly at each session of any matters relative to the maintenance of international peace and security, which are being dealt with by the Security Council, and shall similarly notify the General Assembly or the members of the United Nations if the General Assembly is not in session. Immediately, the Security Council ceases to deal with such matters. Okay, we invaded Venezuela. If the Security Council takes this up, everybody gets an email. Has that happened yet? Once that is done, everybody gets another email. Simple. So, provided with Article 12, this is how they do it, may make recommendations to the members of the United Nations or to Security Council or both on any such questions or matters. The General Assembly may consider the general principles of cooperation in the maintenance of international peace and security, including the principles governing disarmament and the regulation of armaments, and may make recommendations with regard to such principles to the members of the Security Council or to both. We think the Ukraine shouldn't have a stockpile of nukes. Now they can't protect themselves from Russia. See what I mean? That was a decision. They wanted to become a member. They wanted da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The General Assembly may discuss any questions relating to the maintenance of international peace and security brought before it by any member of the United Nations or by the Security Council or by a state which is not a member of the United Nations in accordance with Article 35, Paragraph 2 and except as provided in Article 12, which is how they do it, may make recommendations with regard to any such questions to the state or states concerned or to the Security Council or to both. In other words, send an email. And any such question on which action is necessary shall be referred to the Secretary Council by the General Assembly either before or after discussion. So if you send in an email, they might look at it, they might talk about it, and there will be emails going out to all the member nations and also to the Security Council. See what I mean? Now, non-membership is probably Article 35 in paragraph 2. The General Assembly may call the attention of the Security Council to situations which are likely to endanger international peace and security. If you notice, there's a thread going to this: peace and security. The powers of the General Assembly set forth in this article shall not limit the general scope of Article 10, which we just read. They can talk about it. Okay, what was Article 35? Paragraph 2. A state which is not a member of the United Nations may bring to the attention of the Security Council or the General Assembly any dispute to which it is party if it accepts in advance for the purposes of the dispute the obligations of pacific settlement provided in the present charter. There's a hitch in the giddy up here. Interesting. Okay. Article 13. General Assembly shall initiate studies and make recommendations for the purpose of promoting international cooperation in the political field and encouraging the progressive development of international law and its codification, rules-based policies, keeping the peace, keeping an order, but making it flexible enough for nations to be sovereign and express their ethnicities. That's a delicate dance, folks. Is this man playing God? Maybe. Right now it's not working. Canada just called it out and said, you're not doing your job. And they're right. Problem is, they want to do something different, which makes them the new hegemony. Give it time, and they will be invading us and Alaska and wanting to take over this Western Hemisphere because power corrupts. That's right. So, the purposes of, or for the purpose of, promoting international cooperation in the economic, social, cultural, educational, and health fields, and assisting in the realization of human rights and fundamental freedoms for all without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion. Further responsibilities, functions, and powers of the General Assembly with respect to matters mentioned in paragraph 1 are also set forth in chapters 9 and 10. Interesting, because we're in chapter 4. Article 14. Subject to the provisions of Article 12, General Assembly may recommend measures for the peaceful adjustment of any situation, regardless of origin, which it deems likely to impair the general welfare or friendly relations among nations, including situations resulting from a violation of the provisions of the present charter, setting forth the purposes and principles of the United Nations, like we invaded Venezuela and took their leader and created chaos and dropped ordnance there. Article 15, General Assembly shall receive and consider annual and special reports from the Security Council. These reports shall include an account of the measures that the Security Council has decided upon or taken to maintain international peace and security. General Assembly shall receive and consider reports from other organs of the United Nations, in other words, other voices. Article 16, the General Assembly shall perform such functions with respect to the international trusteeship system as are assigned to it under chapters 12 and 13, according to the approval of the trusteeship agreements for areas not designated as strategic. Interesting. Article 17, the General Assembly shall consider and approve the budget of the organization. The expenses of the organization will be borne by the members as appointed by the General Assembly. Full stop. Trump kept saying they haven't been paying their dues, those middle states. Canada's reference to Europe as the middle states, they haven't been paying their dues. Is that true? Bet not. But then again, I don't know. The General Assembly shall consider and approve any financial and budgetary arrangements with specialized agencies referred to in Article 57, and shall examine the administrative budgets of such specialized agencies with a view to making recommendations to the agencies concerned. What agencies? Article 57, the various specialized agencies established by the Intergovernmental Agreement and having wide international responsibilities as defined in their basic instruments in economic, social, cultural, educational, health, related fields shall be brought into relationship with the United Nations in accordance with the provisions in Article 63. Such agencies thus brought into relationship with the United Nations are hereinafter referred to as specialized agencies. 63. The Economic and Social Council may enter into agreements with any other agencies referred to in Article 57. Defining the terms on which the agency concerned shall be brought into relationship with the United Nations, such agreements shall be subject to approval by the General Assembly. It may coordinate the activities of specialized agencies through consultation with and recommendations to such agencies and through recommendations to General Assembly and members of the United Nations. Never says what the agencies are. That's politics for you folks. It just doesn't say it. Fine. Back to the read. Article 18. Each member of the General Assembly has one vote. See, this is kind of tedious, but this is the rules. By the way, it mirrors the Constitution. It mirrors how we do business in the United States. The reason why the United States is the holder is because United Nations is run in the same manner United States is run. This is a constitution, like it or not. This is the Constitution of the world. You don't like it? Think about it. And think about this, folks, as a Christian. Who else is watching all of this? God. In the red letter edition, there's a thing about vows. I haven't done it yet, but I will get to it. Vows are held to be, keep them. You make a vow, keep it. Of course, the section in the red letter out of Matthew says, don't make vows, because then you don't have to keep them. Just do the commitment. Oh, shoot, I just gave away the whole doggone program. What? Oh, well, all right. Decisions of the General Assembly on important questions shall be made by a two-thirds majority of the members present and voting. The questions shall include recommendations with respect to the maintenance of international peace and security, the election of non-permanent members of the Security Council, election of members of the Economic and Social Council, election of members of the Trusteeship Council, in accordance with paragraph 1C of Article 86, the admission of new members to the United Nations, the suspension of rights and privileges of membership, the expulsion of members, questions relating to the operation of the trustee system, and budgetary questions. That would be an interesting article to look at. Decisions on other questions, including the determination and additional categories of questions to be decided by a two-thirds majority, shall be made by a majority of the members present and voting. Two-thirds. Now, here's the thing. The House can say, impeach the King of Orange. Do it now, and impeach everybody else. And they send it up, unanimous vote. The House says, yes, let's do it. And they slap it at the floor of the Senate, and the Senate has to look at this and go, well, because impeachment is an indictment. You are charged with this, but do we convict and sentence, or do we never take it to trial? That's all impeachment is, an indictment. Those who care about their legacy don't want this, but it's powerless without conviction. See, you can be indicted for stuff all day long, but if nobody ever convicts you, then it's just a smear campaign. It's allegement. There's no power in it until the Senate suddenly goes two-thirds majority. Yes, King of Orange has sinned greatly. We must convict. Sentence is removal of the King of Orange from being the POTUS. Now, in this case, I'm not being nice, but Donald Trump will be forgotten in history. But when we say the King of Orange, anybody who understands that immediately sees the very orange skin tones of Donald Trump. It's his makeup that costs him the title the King of Orange. King because he's POTUS. It's good to be the POTUS, is it? But if two-thirds majority of the Senate never does anything, which as long as it's Republican it won't, because Donny Boy is a Republican and they never unseat. When Clinton got impeached, the Democrats were in the Senate. They didn't convict. Or did they find it wasn't convictable? Impeachable, but not convictable. Same with Obama when he pulled a few things. Impeachable maybe, but would we really ever convict? The problem is they don't convict their seated person. Why? Because the party nominated them, backed them, said rah, rah, sis, boom, bah to them. And now the party's going to take the hit if they then have to bounce their person out of the resolute death seat. Oh, And it becomes a cascade show because then they start vetting and questioning everything underneath that person. It becomes a massive problem. That's why they don't do it. Okay, so 2/3 majority by the majority of the members present and not saying I abstain from voting. So, I mean, if you have 3 members voting and 2 of them say yay, one of them says no, there's your 2/3 majority. So you have to have apparently 3, because you only have 2, you don't have a quorum. You have to have 2/3, so there has to be at least 3 people voting. Well, I would hope in the United Nations there would be more than 3 people voting on any such issue. Article 19, a member of the United Nations, which is in arrear of the payment of its financial contributions to the organization, shall have no vote in the General Assembly if the amount of its arrears equals or exceeds the amount of the contributions due from it for the preceding 2 full years. Folks, you want to know if Donald Trump, and I have to use his name because he's the man that's saying it. I can't say POTUS because POTUS is just the office. Donald Trump is the person alleging that these people have not been paying their dues. If they've not been paying their dues for more than 2 years, they're not voting. Go and find out if they're voting. If in this year, if they have voted in consecutive since, let's just say 2020 to 2026, that means that as so far as for 6 years, they've not been in deficit. They've been meeting their dues. They've been paying their dues. Just like the Girl Scouts, it has dues. You pay dues every year. I know. I was one. I was a junior and I was a cadet, and then I became a senior. Yep. Girl Scout. Giggle, snicker, through and through. There we go. And no, I do not consider my vows to that organization as still in force. Sorry, girls, you're not my king. The General Assembly may nevertheless permit such a member to vote if it is satisfied that the failure to pay is due to conditions beyond the control of the member. Okay, that's the caveat. What if they're in national bankruptcy and they can't pay for 2 years, and they're showing the paperwork that says we can't even keep our nation afloat, let alone pay our dues? They might be allowed to float. So this is mean all these nations that haven't been paying their dues for years and years and years are all in bankruptcy or some other catastrophic thing that they can't afford their dues? If they're voting, are they voting as a member that's paid their dues, or are they voting as a member that's got something gone so awry that they can't pay their dues? That might be something to find out. Procedure. Article 20, General Assembly shall meet in regular annual sessions and in such special sessions as the occasion may require. Special sessions shall be convoked by the Secretary General at the request of the Secretary Council or of a majority of the members of the United Nations. Article 21, General Assembly shall adopt its own rules of procedure. It shall elect its president for each session. Ooh, they have a president? Yes, do you know what a president is? The one who presides over. The president is the presider over the nation. That's all a president is, a presider. That's why he's commander-in-chief, because he's the presider. Congress holds the power unless it abdicates it by not doing its job in these United States. But the office of president just means that this man or woman presides over the nation, represents the nation as its presider. So an elected president is done every session. Somebody new gets to be president at every session because they're just presiding over the session. Cha-ching! Article 22, General Assembly may establish such subsidiary organs as it deems necessary to the performance of its functions. Fine. Subsidiary thing, councils, groups, whatever. Its functions are to keep the peace and the benefit and the welfare, blah, 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 blah. It's already been told. Go back to the beginning and listen. Chapter 5, Security Council. Article 23, Security Council shall consist of 15 members of the United Nations, the Republic of China, France, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, United Kingdom of Great Britain, Northern Ireland, the United States, shall be permanent members of the Security Council. Oh, snap! That's why we're getting away with what we're getting away with. We're permanent members. So does that mean we can't be bounced? Is that why Russia gets to get away with and China gets to get away with and everybody's cozying up? That's a problem. That should never have been established. That rule needs to be amended. The General Assembly shall elect 10 other members of the United Nations to be non-permanent members of the Security Council. Due regard being specifically paid in the first instance to the contribution of members of the United Nations to the maintenance of international peace and security and to other purposes of the organization, and also to equitable geographic distribution. That's a hitch in the giddy-up. That's a problem. That ought not to be there. The non-permanent members of the Security Council, the Security Council, not the UN. Excuse me, the Security Council. We're on the Security Council as permanent member. The Security Council with permanent membership, that means we can't get bounced. Non-permanent members, 10 of which are added, shall be elected for a term of 2 years. First election of non-permanent members after the increase of the membership of the Security Council from 11 to 15. 2 of the 4 additional members shall be chosen for a term of 1 year. A retiring member shall not be eligible for immediate re-election. Each member to the Security Council shall have 1 representative. See, the fact that what we're doing is such a big deal is because we're part of the Security Council and we're the founding member of the group. I mean, anybody but you. That's why everybody's giving us a wide berth, but they shouldn't. Article 24, functions and powers. In order to ensure prompt and effective action by the United Nations, its members confer on the Security Council primary responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security, and agree that in carrying out its duties under this responsibility, the Security Council acts on their behalf. In discharging these duties, the Security Council shall act in accordance with the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Specific powers granted to the Security Council for the discharge of these duties are laid down in chapters 6, 7, 8, and 12. The Security Council shall submit annual, when necessary, special reports to the General Assembly for its consideration. Let's look at these chapters because we're part of it. So how are we supposed to act? 6, 7, and 8. 6. The Pacific settlement of disputes. The parties to any dispute, the continuance of which is likely to endanger the maintenance of international peace and security, shall first of all seek a resolution by negotiation, inquiry, mediation, conciliation, arbitration, judicial settlement, resort to regional agencies or arrangements, or other peaceful terms of their own choice. Peace first. That's the idea. The Security Council shall, when it deems necessary, call upon the parties to settle their disputes by such means, peacefully first. The Security Council may investigate any dispute or any situation which might lead to international friction or give rise to a dispute in order to determine whether the continuance of the dispute or situation is likely to endanger the maintenance of international peace and security. Any member of the United Nations may bring any dispute or any situation of the nature referred to in Article 34, which was a dispute or situation which might lead to international friction, to the attention of the Security Council or of the General Assembly. A state which is not a member of the United Nations may bring to the attention, this was Article 35, this was paragraph 2. So may a state that is not a member. A state that is a member may bring a dispute. So may a state that's not a member, but they have to abide by the Charter in doing so. The proceedings of the General Assembly in respect of matters brought to its attention under this article will be subject to provisions of Articles 11 and 12, which we've read. Security Council may at any stage of the dispute of the nature referred to in Article 33 or any situation of like nature recommend appropriate procedures of methods of adjustment. Security Council should take into consideration any procedures for the settlement of the dispute which have already been adopted by the parties. In making recommendations under this article, the Security Council should also take into consideration that legal disputes should, as a general rule, be referred by the parties of the International Court of Justice in accordance with provisions of the statute of the court. Yes, there's an international court. Should the parties of the dispute of the nature referred to in Article 33 fail to settle it by means indicated in that article, they shall refer it to the Security Council. If the Security Council deems that the continuance of the dispute is likely to endanger the maintenance of international peace and security, it shall decide whether to take actions under Article 36 or to recommend such terms of settlement as it may consider appropriate. We just read Article 36. It's very convoluted, isn't it? But so is the Constitution. This is called legalese. Welcome to legalese. I can't stand it either. Keep listening. It's fun. Without prejudice to provisions of Articles 33 to 37, Security Council may, if all the parties to any dispute so request, make recommendations to the parties with a view to a pacific settlement of the dispute. They can make arrangements for peaceful terms of their own choice. Chapter 7. Actions with respect to threats to the peace, breaches of the peace, and acts of aggression. This is the Security Council. The Security Council shall determine the existence of any threat to the peace, breach of the peace, act of aggression, and shall make recommendations or decide what measures shall be taken in accordance with Articles 41 and 42 to restore international peace and security. In order to prevent aggravation of a situation, the Security Council may, before making recommendations or deciding upon the measures provided for in Article 39, call upon the parties concerned to comply with such provisional measures as it deems necessary and desirable. Such provisional measures shall be without prejudice to the rights claimed or positions of the parties concerned. Security Council shall duly take account of failure to comply with such provisional measures. The Security Council may decide what measures not involving the use of armed forces are to be employed to give effect to its decisions, and it may call upon the members of the United Nations to apply such members, like sanctions. These may include complete or partial interruption of economic relations and of rail, sea, air, postal, telegraphic, radio, and other means of communication, and the severance of diplomatic relations. Oh, let's try that for 90 days and see where it gets the United States. Diplomatic relations. If we severed that for 90 days, do you know what it would do to this nation? Pain. Oh, pain. Do you know where that pain would be felt? The oligarchs, the people who bought out our Congress. They would be turning the screws on the Congress to deal with the aberrant that they put in. You know, the said POTUS's cabinet, and maybe even the VP. As in, drain that swamp. Do it now. Get someone else in. Do it right now. Extraordinary times and activities might twist our Constitution and make it get applied in very unusual manners. Article 42. Should the Security Council consider that the measures provided for in Article 41 are inadequate or prove to be inadequate, it may take such action by air, sea, or land forces, this is armed forces, as may be necessary to maintain and restore international peace and security. Such actions may include demonstrations, blockade, and other operations by air, sea, or land forces of members of the United Nations. This is the big threat. Russia and China have been curbed because they don't want Article 42 enacted on them, because that would bring about another world war. They don't want it, but we, the third great superpower, do. We want to take over the world. Just keep that in your thought as I'm reading through this stuff. All members of the United Nations, in order to contribute to the maintenance of international peace and security, undertake to make available to the Security Council on its call and in accordance with special agreement and other agreements, armed forces, assistance, and facilities, including rites of passage necessary for the purpose of maintaining international peace and security. Such agreement or agreements shall govern the members and types of forces, their degree of readiness and general location, and the nature of the facilities and assistance to be provided. The agreement or agreements shall be negotiated as soon as possible on the initiative of the Security Council. They shall be concluded by the Security Council and members or between Security Council and group of members, and shall be subject to ratification by the signatory states in accordance with their respective constitutional processes. The signatory states are us, Russia, China, do you get it? Britain, France, do you get it? The permanent members. When the Security Council has decided to use force, it shall, before calling up a member not represented on it, to provide armed forces in fulfillment of the obligations assumed under Article 43, invite that member or if the member so desires to participate in the decisions of the Security Council concerning the employment of contingent of that member's armed forces. In other words, they can call up your army to become peacekeeping forces, UN peacekeeping forces. Article 45, in order to enable the United Nations to take urgent military measures, members shall hold immediately available national Air Force contingents for combined international enforcement action. That means you change caps. That means the United States military could be demanded by the UN Security Council to change its caps from United States military to United Nations military. The minute it does so, it can turn on U.S. citizens. That's dangerous. But I wonder if it might not be necessary someday. The strength and degree of readiness of these contingents and plans for their combined action shall be determined within the limits laid down in the special agreement or agreements referred to in Article 43 by the Security Council within assistance to Military Staff Committee. Plans for application of armed forces shall be made by Security Council with the assistance of Military Staff Committee. This is going to bang bang, folks. There shall be an establishment of Military Staff Committee to advise and assist the Security Council on all questions relating to Security Council's military requirements for the maintenance of international peace and security, the employment and command of forces placed at its disposal, the regulations of armaments, and possible disarmament. Military Staff Committee, which is one of those adjunct, one of the special committees. This is a special committee. So we have one. Military Staff Committee is probably a special committee. Will consist of Joint Chiefs of Staff of the permanent members of the Security Council or their representatives. Any member of the United Nations not permanently represented on the committee shall be invited by the committee to be associated with it when the efficient discharge of the committee's responsibilities requires the participation of that member in the work. The Military Staff Committee shall be responsible under the Security Council for the strategic direction of any armed forces placed at the disposal of the Security Council. Questions relating to the command of such forces shall be worked out subsequently. In other words, we're making it up as we go. The Military Staff Committee, with the authorization of the Security Council and after consultation with appropriate regional agencies, may establish regional subcommittees. The action required for the carrying out of decisions of the Security Council for the maintenance of international peace and security shall be taken by all the members of the United Nations or by some of them as the Security Council may determine. That's kind of problematic. That's queuing up. That's putting the ball in somebody's court. Such decisions shall be carried out by the members of the United Nations directly and through their action in the appropriate international agencies of which they are members. The members of the United Nations shall join in affording mutual assistance in carrying out the measures decided on by the Security Council. In prevention of the enforcement measures against any state, if preventative or enforcement measures against any state are taken by the Security Council, any other state, whether a member of the United Nations or not, which finds itself confronted with special economic problems arising from the carrying out of these measures, shall have the right to consult the Security Council with regards to a solution of those problems. In other words, if somebody else is being hurt, like Europe gets hurt when they embargo us, they're going to be talking to the UN Security Council. Hey, how do we weather this? Not should we do it, it's how do we get through it? I'm still in favor of something being done to us to put us and curb us to heal. We need to be curbed. Nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations until Security Council has taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security. Measures taken by members in the exercise of this right of self-defense shall be immediately reported to the Security Council and shall not in any way affect the authority and responsibility of the Security Council under the present charter to take at any time such action as it deems necessary in order to maintain and restore international peace and security. In other words, the impaired nothing in the present charter shall stop collective self-defense as in Canada and the Southern American continent nations that may or may not be members, suddenly gear up and arm themselves because UN peacekeeping forces have landed in the lower 48 and possibly are sitting in Alaska because we are being militarily dealt with because we're just that bad. They have the right to protect their borders. Yes, they do. That's what I think this is saying. And once it's over, they can stand down, hopefully. And we will continue this on our next episode of This and That. So until then,